So when it comes to the UK, things are getting pretty bad. I mean, truth be told, we probably just had one of our weirdest months ever. And I think the only way to do it justice is to just show you what I mean. Because we started the month off with a very strange story. With Tesco installing smoke machines in their shops. Like, that's the length they've got to go to these days. They've just got to install these smoke machines. As well as it's got a camera fixed on it as well. And it's meant to fill the room with smoke so the criminals don't know where anything is. Because it really is crazy that Tesco have to go to these measures. And these are just to be wheeled out for overnight use. From the sounds of it, they're not just going to be on the shop floor when you've got customers there. But who knows what the future holds? Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing these in the shops. Or in the ceiling or something like that. But on the way back from a very strange Tesco trip, we saw these two signs. And they're currently located in Bradford as well. Which I probably should have let you guess on that one. But that is the state of the UK at the moment. And one of the channel members, right, he was actually able to translate it. Because he says that it means actually, to be fair, I'm not going to read that out. I don't want to trigger any sort of like voodoo or anything like that. But you can read it there what it translates into. And that is on the British streets right now. But the very next day, just after seeing those Bradford signs, the month took an even weirder twist. Because it turns out that London Land Rover drivers are now chaining their cars to trees. Because you can see the image on screen there. The way they've just wrapped it around the tree and they've just tied it to the car. Like, that's the state of the UK at the moment. And the state of the crime as well. Like, this is a person that's basically lost all faith. All faith in the police force and their ability to get that car back. Because he knows once that car's taken, he knows full well he's got a very slim chance of getting it back. So he's almost having to take matters into his own hands. And it really does let you know exactly how the public feel. But I do know how the public are going to feel about this one. Because after years and years of Sadiq Khan pretty much forcing you and like bribing you just to get an electric car, has now decided that he's going to put the congestion charge on these electric vehicles. Which is really not what anyone signed up for. Like, can you imagine spending like 35, 40 grand or even more on an electric car? Just for Sadiq Khan to then charge you to drive in your own capital city. Like, this guy here, this absolute donut. He's moved the goalposts and he's probably still going to get voted in next time as well. But the very next day, we saw probably one of the worst stories of the year. Because as you can see on screen, these are multi-wife benefits. Like, I'm really not sure why you'd need multiple wives. Or how anyone can put up with the arguments. But this right here is the money that they get just for having multiple wives, whilst claiming things like ESA and benefits. So it says for the claimant and the other party to the marriage. That's just your regular run-of-the-mill marriage. You got person number 1 and person number 2. They get £332 per week. But for each additional spouse, that's every single additional wife that you've got. You know, you might have one in the cupboard, one in the kitchen. But for every single one that you can squeeze into the house, the government will pay you £114.80 every single week. And you might have thought that things like this, like bigamy and polygamy, you might have thought they were a crime in the UK. But it turns out if you got married overseas to like 7 people, then the UK still has to legally acknowledge it. And they still have to hand out benefits, even though the marriage didn't happen here. I gotta tell you, bit by bit, the UK is changing, and it's not for good. But if you needed another measurement of just how far the UK has fallen, have a look at this, because it says that brazen stone thieves have left a huge hole after stealing a whole chunk of a Halifax pavement. And this is it on screen here. They have quite literally just taken the paving slabs. I honestly, I couldn't believe it when I saw it. Someone has just stolen some dirty paving slabs. And I know they might be able to give them a pressure wash. I actually did my back garden paving slabs the other day. And once you do the pressure wash, it really is a night and day difference. But even still, even if you can wash them and reuse them, don't steal paving slabs. Because it really is a sign that the UK is just turning into a very strange place at the moment. Like, the amount of planning and calculation that's going to have gone into that. Like, you'd have to go at night, then you'd have to take a van. You'd have to bring a shovel to sort of try and get them out. Like, it's just not good. Just buy your own slabs. Just buy your own slabs. And then the very next day, we saw a story which, I mean, it's a pretty confusing one. Because on one hand, electric car companies, as well as governments, they're telling you that their products are completely safe. But on the other hand, the International Fire Training Centre has just launched new electric vehicle fire training courses. And don't get me wrong, it's a great idea if they're going to train on how to deal with electric car fires. But just like yourself, we were heavily informed that they were just as safe as normal cars. And I'm sure you've seen the videos as well, of where an electric car does catch on fire. Like, all things aside, you gotta imagine when that battery heats up, and whatever's in it starts to boil. Like, you really don't want to be anywhere near that. Like, not only are you gonna get sparks, but half of it's gonna be on fire as well. And this photo here of them charging it out their window, that is just awful manners. Like, that really is. But as if dodgy electric cars wasn't enough, we actually saw the police in a British town. They actually took the day off just to go to a Black History exhibition. Like, just a paid day off just to go and see some Black History. Because it's been 4 years since we had that BLM situation. 4 years. And they're still doing stuff like this. One guy in the comments actually said that I'm surprised they weren't taking the knee in the photo. And honestly, I'm kind of surprised as well. But that still doesn't take away from the cringe of this situation. But you might be wondering why the police have to go to these just random museums that would not have been in Britain 50 years ago. Well, that's because the population in England and Wales has risen by the most in 75 years. So that's why we're having to go out of our way and just create random museums. It's because our population is just going through the roof. And it is going to be very similar for the rest of Britain. Like, they're all dealing with their own situations. But that population increase, it was saying in the article that it went up in 1 year by 610,000. And it said that most of that was actually driven by immigration. Obviously, a small portion of it is illegal, but a large chunk of it is legal migration. And there's some pros and cons to that. But most of all, our country is getting absolutely full. And up in Scotland, things are not much better. Because we saw the very next day, we saw that the police in Scotland were paying officers to attend pride marches. Like, imagine that. Just taxpayer money. Just quite literally being spent on pride tickets. And that's not officers giving security to the event. Because they're already in attendance. This is for officers to actually go and enjoy it. Like, just paying them to take part in the actual parade itself. And I live next door to 2 women. And I really think that even they would find this a waste of money. Because if you were wondering what the police are actually getting up to, like with all those billions that we send them each and every year, if you were wondering if they're actually putting it to good use, well, the article on screen will actually show you that it's the exact opposite. Because there's a small selection of streets in Leeds, with 56 burglaries, where the police have not solved a single one. That is absolutely awful. And these selection of streets, it only had about 300 houses on it. So out of 300 houses, 56 have been burgled. Like, that stat is bad enough. But when you combine that with 0% of them being solved, it puts it into perspective just how bad things are. But luckily, it's not actually all bad news. Because people are waking up and it is happening very fast. Because you can see the headline here. 500,000 households have cancelled their BBC licence fee in the last year. That is 500,000. Eventually they are going to run out, because it really is happening. People have been going on about this for years, like most of the population just leaving the BBC and just cancelling the TV licence. But honestly, I'm pretty optimistic seeing this, especially if they're just going to smear us and label us with nicknames. And you might be sat there thinking to yourself, hang on a second, clown, this all sounds very negative. And you might wonder if there's any good news stories that are out there. And whilst there aren't many, I was able to find this one. Because it says that Hackney Town Council is giving away £2,000 in grants. But the bad news is that this money is only available to celebrate Black History season. So they're essentially giving away £2,000. And there's multiple different grants as well. So that's multiple thousands of pounds of taxpayer money just being spent on Black History. And before you ask, I did have to search. Hackney Town Council raised their council tax by the highest ever last year. In fact, they raised it by the maximum, which is 4.99%. So Hackney Town Council raised their council tax, and a couple of months later they're giving away thousands of pounds just to celebrate Black History. Honestly, it kinda makes you wonder why we even bother paying council tax. But believe it or not, all of these stories happened in a 1-month period. Like, that is just 1 month. Like, can you imagine how bad things are in the UK? That just these stories here all happened within a month. Like I said, it really puts into perspective just how bad things are. Because any one of these stories just on their own, I mean, you know, they're pretty bad stories. But when you put them all together like this, like I said, it is very difficult to see just how we're going to get out of this. But maybe it's Tesco installing smoke machines in their shops. Or it might even be people stealing the pavement. Whatever happens, you must admit, this country is getting kind of funny. And thank you for becoming one of the 40,758 subscribers.
This country has gone crazy.